Okay, so we're diving into Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. And this book, it's not your typical business book, right? It's part memoir, part kind of like a manifesto for how women approach their careers. So ready to unpack some of the big ideas here.
Absolutely. It's really fascinating how Sandberg uses her own experiences and kind of weaves those in with, research and data about the challenges women face at work. It makes it really relatable, but also really insightful.
Yeah, for sure. And Sandberg starts off by talking about how much progress women have made in the working world.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had, female prime ministers, astronauts, all of that.
Yeah.
But she also points out that we're still aiming for true equality.
Definitely a crucial point, and she uses a powerful analogy to show this. She talks about her own grandmother who had to fight to even stay in school because back then girls' education wasn't really a priority. Can you imagine?
Right.
Really puts into perspective how far we've come, but also how far we still have to go.
Yeah, totally. It makes you think. And that leads into one of the main themes of the book, this ambition gap. Basically, this idea that women and men often have different levels of ambition. And it's not because we're inherently different, but because of how we're raised and socialized. Right?
Exactly. It's like Sandberg argues that women are almost told to downplay their ambition, while for men, it's celebrated. She even talks about this time when she was on a list of powerful women and she felt embarrassed instead of proud.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. It's almost like we're taught to shy away from our achievements instead of owning them. And the research really backs this up. She talks about a study where men and women students got the same great grade on a test. The men were totally confident, but the women doubted themselves. It's crazy how these subtle biases can work.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right? It makes you think about all the times you might have downplayed your own wins or hesitated to go after what you wanted.
Hmm.
And it's not even just about individual confidence. It's about these bigger societal expectations. It's so true. So Sandberg talks about this thing we've probably all felt at some point in our careers, impostor syndrome, that feeling of not being good enough, even when you have the experience and the proof to back it up. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely. And she says it's super common among women because there's this pressure to be perfect in every single area of life. We're judged, more harshly held to these higher standards, and it's easy to internalize that and start doubting ourselves.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
We doubt ourselves, so we don't take risks or go for big opportunities. And then because we didn't even try, it just makes that feeling of not being good enough even stronger.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why one of Sandberg's main messages is about women taking a seat at the table, overcoming that self-doubt, speaking up, sharing our ideas, and owning what we've accomplished.
I love that analogy. And it's not just about physically being in the room, right? It's about showing up with confidence and sharing your own unique point of view. Exactly. She even tells a story about a meeting where she almost missed this key insight because she was hesitant to speak up. It reminds us that holding back doesn't just hurt us. It can affect the whole team or organization.
So how do we get over that hesitation and really own our place at the table?
Well, Sandberg gives a lot of practical tips, but one of the biggest things is changing our mindset. Moving away from needing to be perfect and embracing this idea of progress over perfection.
So true. Being brave enough to speak up, even if we're not 100% sure of ourselves, and trusting that our voices and what we have to say matters.
All right, so we've talked about the ambition gap imposter syndrome and the importance of speaking up. What else does Sandberg get into in Lean In?
One thing that really resonated with me was her take on careers. She challenges that whole corporate ladder idea and says it's more like a jungle gym.
Okay, I like that analogy. What do you mean by that? Help me connect the dots.
No.
Well, think about it. A ladder is very straight. You climb one rung at a time, and there's only one way up. But a jungle gym, you can explore different paths, take risks, maybe even swing back around if you need to. It's a lot more fluid and dynamic, which is how she thinks we should see our careers.
That's a really good point. It's not always about following that one straight path. Sometimes the best opportunities come from trying something unexpected or being open to a totally different direction.
Exactly. And she even uses an example from her own life. Joining Google wasn't the obvious next step for her career at the time, but she followed the advice to just get on the rocket ship, and it obviously paid off.
So it sounds like she's encouraging us to be more adaptable and embrace those unexpected twists and turns that life throws our way.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and try something new. You never know where it might lead.
We've covered a lot here: the ambition gap imposter syndrome, finding your voice, and being more flexible with your career. What else does Sandberg talk about in Lean In?
Well, she also gets really real about how tough it is to balance a successful career with a fulfilling personal life, especially when it comes to relationships and family.
That's something I definitely want to hear more about.
Yeah, she's really big on finding a true partner. Someone who really shares in all parts of life, from chores around the house to taking care of the kids. And she's honest about the challenges she and her husband faced, even with her success.
Totally. She doesn't try to make it seem easy. It really hit me when she was talking about how important it is to move past those old-fashioned gender roles at home. It shouldn't be about the husband helping out. It should be a real partnership.
I'm right there with you. It reminded me of this one part where she talks about how we tend to go overboard praising men for doing the bare minimum as parents. Like, oh, wow, he's such a great dad for taking his kids to the park. It's like we expect so much less from fathers while mothers are supposed to be perfect at everything. So true. And speaking of doing it all, she has this whole section where she's like, okay, let's be real, that's a myth. She gets that balancing work, and family is hard, and she wants women to let go of that pressure to be perfect.
Absolutely. She's all about setting priorities, getting help when you need it, and accepting that you can't be everything to everyone all the time. Sometimes we got to make tough choices, and that's okay. It's about what works for you and your family, not living up to some impossible standard.
I think that's a really important message. We put so much pressure on ourselves to be amazing at everything, but it's just not realistic.
It's not, and she even tells this funny story about this woman who admitted to putting her kids to bed in their school clothes just to save time in the morning. It's a good reminder that we all find our own ways to manage, and there's no one right way to do things.
I love that story. It makes the advice feel more doable.
Exactly. She also talks about the success and likability penalty that women often face. Basically, this idea that as women achieve more, they're often seen as less likable, while men are praised for those same things. Talk about a double standard, right? We're told to be strong and go after what we want, but then we get called too aggressive or cold. It's like you just can't win.
Right. She gives this example of how she was treated differently than her male classmates in business school, even though they had similar grades and goals. It's these subtle biases that can really hold women back.
So frustrating. So what does she say we can do about it? How do you navigate that?
She has a few practical tips. One is to focus on building strong relationships and really connecting with people, both men and women. When people get to know you on a personal level, they're less likely to just rely on stereotypes.
That makes a lot of sense. It's hard to put someone in a box when you see them as a real person with their own unique experiences.
Exactly. And she also encourages women to be aware of how they communicate. Like using we instead of I when talking about achievements. It's a small change, but it can make you seem more like a team player and less like you're bragging.
I've definitely heard that advice before.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to fall back into old habits, isn't it?
For sure. It takes effort, but it can make a big difference. Another thing she talks about is speaking your truth, even when it feels scary. She wants women to find their voices and use them to challenge the way things are.
I love that. It's so easy to stay quiet, especially when you're worried about what people will think.
Yeah.
But she's saying we have to speak up, not just for ourselves, but for other women who might not have that same opportunity.
And she knows it's not always easy to do that. She even shares her own experience of being criticized for giving a talk about women at work, even though it was just one of many talks she'd given on different topics.
Wow, that's really tough to hear. But it also shows how important this is. If someone as successful as Sheryl Sandberg is facing backlash for speaking out, imagine what it's like for women who are just starting their careers or don't have that level of influence.
I know, right? And she doesn't let that fear stop her. She sees it as even more of a reason to keep speaking up and fighting for change. Another big thing she talks about is mentorship and sponsorship.
What's the difference again? I always mix those two up.
Good question. Mentorship is more about guidance and support. Someone who can give you advice and share their experiences. Sponsorship is more about advocating for you and helping you move up in your career. It's like having someone in your corner who's going to open doors for you and champion your potential.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we find these mentors and sponsors? Should we be asking everyone we meet for career advice?
Well, Sandberg's take on mentorship is a little different from the traditional way. It's not about finding someone to hold your hand and tell you exactly what to do every step of the way. It's more about proving yourself doing amazing work and attracting mentors and sponsors who see your potential and want to invest in you.
So it's more about showing your worth and letting your work speak for itself.
Yes, like she says, we need to stop telling women, get a mentor and you will excel. Instead, we need to tell them, excel and you will get a mentor. It's about taking charge of your career and showing everyone what you're capable of.
I love how empowering that is. It's not about waiting for permission or an opportunity. It's about making those things happen for yourself.
For sure. And it's not just about finding mentors and sponsors either. She also talks about how important it is to build genuine connections with your peers. Networking, not just for the sake of networking, but building real relationships that can give you support and guidance throughout your career.
And recognizing that there's room for everyone to be successful, right?
Exactly. When women support each other, everyone benefits.
It really is true. When we work together, it's amazing what we can accomplish. But Sandberg also says that this isn't just a conversation for women.
Right.
Men should be a part of it too.
Absolutely. She talks about how important it is for men to be allies in this, like fighting for equality both at home and at work. It's about understanding that this isn't just a women's issue. It affects all of us.
So men need to challenge their own biases,
Yeah.
support women in the workplace, and really show up as equal partners at home.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? Sandberg doesn't shy away from the tough stuff in this book. She talks about things like sexual harassment and discrimination and how crucial it is to have a workplace where everyone feels safe and respected.
Yeah, that's so true. We can't ignore those issues just because they're uncomfortable. We have to talk about them openly and honestly if we really want to see change.
I agree. And while Sandberg says that, yeah, we've come a long way, she's also real about the fact that we still have a ways to go.
Definitely not sugarcoating anything.
No.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lean In, what are some of the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
For me, I think one of the most important things is that we're all responsible for challenging the way things are, whether it's about gender roles at home, biases at work, or just what society expects from us. We got to be willing to speak up and fight for something better.
I'm with you on that.
Mm.
It's not always easy to be the one who shakes things up, but sometimes that's what it takes to make a real difference.
And another big one for me is supporting each other. It makes such a difference when we work together, lift each other up, and celebrate each other's wins.
That feeling of community is huge, especially when you're trying to deal with challenges and break down those barriers.
So as we finish up, what would you say to someone who's feeling inspired to lean in, but maybe they're not sure where to begin?
I'd say start by thinking about the ways you might be holding yourself back. Are you downplaying your achievements? Hesitant to share your ideas in meetings? Are you letting those doubts stop you from going after what you want? Once you know what those things are, you can start to challenge those thoughts and start believing in yourself more.
That's great advice. It's about recognizing those negative thoughts we have and choosing to think differently. And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's a mentor, a friend, a colleague, or even just a good book like Lean In. There's so much support out there.
Exactly. And remember, change doesn't just happen overnight. It takes time, and there will be bumps in the road. But every step you take towards owning your ambition and making the world a fairer place matters.
So well said. Lean In is more than just a career guide. It's a call to action for everyone to create a better and more equal world. If you haven't read it yet, I definitely recommend adding it to your list. It's one of those books that stays with you long after you've finished it.